Disappointed in Hunter.
And Hunter, very much so, yeah.
Right. Are you saying she was disappointed that more serious action couldn't be taken against Hunter, or?
No, she's just disappointed that I think that, to find out that she had in fact used some bad language.
And that was what she was disciplined for, right?
That's correct.
And you sustained the fact that she had been using some bad
Exactly.
language? Okay. And in Captain Hunter's 20-year career, when you reviewed her personnel file, she had just the one prior incident recently, correct? With
That's
the
right.
use of the boxing gloves. So
Right.
this female rose to the level of captain, no discipline, correct, until that one written reprimand.
From what I can see in her jacket, yes.
Okay. And when the discussion of the, Ms. Thompson's belief that this was an inadequate investigation, the other witness that was interviewed in this internal investigation was Sella's partner, who would have been present when and if Captain Hunter said anything during the months of May, June, and July, which was the other part of his complaint, correct?
Say that one.
Yeah, I didn't ask that very well, sorry. We talked all about these August 4th incidents. Ms. Thompson brought up that there were other allegations of inappropriate language
That's
and
correct.
things in the workplace between Sella and Hunter, or Hunter to Sella. And isn't it true that the allegations were, he alleged that things had occurred during either May, June, and July, or June and July of 2012, that Hunter had said some inappropriate things to him when she came up on the unit where he worked, correct?
That's correct.
And he identified his partner, Officer Plotz, as a witness to those things. And so when Captain Vanis did the internal investigation, he interviewed Officer Plotz, didn't he?
Yes.
Okay. And based on what Officer Plotz told him, there was nothing to sustain the level of things that were alleged by Sella.
That's correct.
Okay. So in other words, Plotz said, yeah, you know, she flirts a little or whatever, she may say some things, but it wasn't anything we were offended by, isn't that true?
That's correct. We didn't find any other, anything to the level that's described by Sella.
So in terms of the depth of the investigation or the thoroughness of the investigation, who else could have been interviewed besides the person who was supposedly a witness to the things that occurred in May, June, and July, and the people that were supposedly witnesses to the August 4th incident? Who else could be interviewed?
Well, you know, unless you wanted to go ahead and, just go on a fishing expedition, which, we were not gonna do that.
And did I understand you to say earlier that you actually asked Dr. Ford about some of the allegations and whether she'd ever observed such things, because
Yes.
she's worked with her for 20
That's
years?
correct.
And Dr. Ford told you?
She did not.
So there was nothing there to investigate in interviewing anyone else, was there?
Not at that time.
That's all.
Evo, your turn. Quick question. To what extent, if any, at the jail is electronic surveillance used?
It's a great deal of it. There's a lot of cameras
I would think so.
around the jail.
Yeah. But none of this ever, a lot of this is verbal, so.
Correct.
Okay, just curious. Yes.
I have a question. I don't know if you might not be able to answer this. Maybe I should have asked the again. Is there a policy on retaliation?
Oh, absolutely, there's.
Is that explained?
You
Is that
cannot, we follow the laws that, protect people, the whistleblower acts, that are out there.
What does that explain to the person?
They go through a lot in their orientation. A lot of them also go through, and I'd have to check the records for Sgt West, but they're often gone through extra supervisory training and other trainings, and at that time, all the rules are often re-explained, re-talked to about. But I don't know specifically to answer your question. I don't know for sure on that, if they're explained about whistleblowing.
In the case of Sgt West, I believe someplace in his testimony he stated something about, or indicated something about retaliation. And my question to that is should that be explained, the rules about retaliation be explained at the beginning of his an investigative process. So that he feels a little bit more comfortable, he or anybody.
Well, remember that, I think that's, I can look into that. You remember, he came in purely as a witness to begin with, and he gave the testimony that he had witnessed it two times. So, at that time, apparently, he, I think correctly, felt strongly that it had happened, and he was reporting, he was testifying to that.
But nobody asked him, was he suffering from possible retaliation?
No one asked him that question.
All right, I think we've hit a pause here. Thank you for your testimony.
The only other witness's testimony that I want to make sure is included in this case, and I don't see any need to recall Mr. Moats because you all heard his testimony regarding prior cases of people who have been terminated for lying and false reporting reports. And his testimony, I believe, if you recall, was that at least 33 since he's been here, people have been terminated for the same violation. So I want to make sure his testimony from the Schneider matter is carried over into your deliberations and consideration today in the West case.
So noted.
Okay, thank you. I would rest, thank you.
Let's call Gina West. She is.
Right up there in that very comfortable chair in the front. Were you here earlier to be sworn in?
Yes.
Okay,
I stand behind you.
thank you for the reminder. I was lost in your time here. Okay, would you state your name for the record, please?
Gina West.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to ask you to speak up because some of us are a little deaf up here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Gina West.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Could you tell the board your relationship to Sgt West?
He's my husband.
How long have you been married?
14 years.
And what is your profession?
I'm a registered nurse in the emergency room,
Which emergency room?
Parish Medical Center in Titusville.
And how long have you been a registered nurse?
Since 2004, May.
As part of your education and training, did you study pharmaceuticals?
Yes, we did.
And in your day-to-day job duties, are you also exposed to pharmaceuticals?
Yes.
On January 26th, your husband was injured at a softball game. Were you present at the softball game?
No.
Did you become aware of the injury?
Yes, when he came home.
Okay. And did you accompany him to the hospital?
Yes.
I've provided you there with some medical records that were provided as part of the medical care that your husband received. Do you recognize those documents?
It looks familiar. It looks like just his discharge paperwork.
Okay. And during that emergency room visit, was your husband prescribed any medications?
Yes.
Which medications?
Naproxen and Flexeril.
Are you familiar with those medications?
Yes.
What is your knowledge of naproxen?
It's an anti-inflammatory that we give to reduce the swelling, which in turn helps to decrease pain.
Okay. And then what about your medical knowledge of Flexeril?
It is a systemic muscle relaxant, and it helps to reduce muscle spasms by targeting the cells in the brainstem, I believe it is, that fire neurons towards the injured muscle.
Okay. You're very scientific with your answers. I went to law school because I don't do science, but what, based upon your knowledge and experience, what are some of the side effects of Flexeril?
It can make you dizzy, it can make you sleepy, it can make you confused, it can make you have dry mouth, it can make you have GI upset. Is it your understanding that on the bottle of Flexeril that there is a warning of some kind? There is a warning. You're not supposed to drive or operate heavy machinery while taking this medication or do any other activities that require you to be fully mentally intact.
Is this a book that you use as part of your medical training?
Yes.
You have it open to, I definitely can't pronounce that word.
Cyclobenzaprine
Is that the scientific name for Flexeril?
is the generic name for Flexeril.
Okay, would you read what is listed there as side effects?
Adverse reactions and side effects in the CNS or central nervous system: dizziness, drowsiness, confusion, fatigue, headache, nervousness. In the eyes, ears, nose, and throat, dry mouth and blurred vision. Cardiovascular could cause arrhythmias. In the GI system, constipation, dyspepsia, nausea, unpleasant taste, and in the genitourinary system, the urinary retention.
Okay. So out of all of that, we've got, definitely have some confusion and nervousness that are included as side effects.
Yes.
Okay. Your husband went to the emergency room on the 26th, and do you have any knowledge as to the scheduling of the next doctor's appointment?
He was supposed to follow up with his doctor according to the physician's assistant that we saw in the emergency room. And I believe that what happened was we called Monday and they couldn't fit us in on Monday and we had to go in on Tuesday.
Okay. So you end up going to,
I think that's what it
you end up actually going to see the second doctor on the 31st. I'm not sure what day of the week that was, but, so you end up going to see the doctor as soon as the doctor can see you.
is. Yes.
Okay. And at that time, so your third page in, the doctor's notes at that time are that Ben is complaining that the pain is still significant.
Yes.
Okay. Tell the board, since you were home with your husband, and you're the only one who can tell us, what was his physical condition at the time?
He was in a severe amount of pain. He couldn't get up out of the bed. He had to have help to roll over on his side and then sit up, and then he had to have help standing up. When he was sitting down in a chair, he couldn't go from a seated position to a standing position without some assistance and a lot of pain. He couldn't get dressed. He couldn't get his jeans on. He had trouble with shoes. He did nothing but flip-flops because he couldn't bend down.
Okay. So is this he was in a different physical condition than typical?
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right. Does the doctor, based upon his condition and his complaint that the pain medicine is not working sufficiently, does the doctor change the dosage?
Not the dosage, but the frequency. I think that it was the same dosage, but instead of only one time a night, she changed it to every 8 hours as needed.
Okay. And that's reflected here on the doctor's notes.
Do you have a copy of the voucher?
Yes.
Okay, you're correct. So the dosage stays the same, but the frequency has been increased.
Yes.
Okay. During this time that Ben is home, is there anything that happens in his personal life that you can relate to the board?
Well, he was concerned about missing time from work because he had already been out with the flu. So he was stressed about, I have to call out again because I can't do my job. He was stressed about the pain itself and frustrated because he couldn't, put on his pants without help. He was worried about the investigation that was going on and had stress about that. But a big stressor in his life at that time was he had recently found out his uncle had died, and he's only 5 years older than Ben. They were raised together. They at some point in time lived in the same roof together, and they had common interests. They hung out a lot, so that was a very big loss. It was more like losing a brother. And he was concerned. His uncle lived all the way out in Colorado. He couldn't go out, for an immediate funeral. They ended up having another memorial service here, but he was very, very heartbroken and grieving. And on top of that, he had medication that he was taking for his diabetes, and it's mostly effective when he's walking. He usually walks 1 to 2 miles with the dogs every day, and he couldn't do that, so his blood sugars were going higher also.
So he's a mess.
Very much.
He's, for lack of a better word, your husband at that point in time, that period of time, is not typical Ben.
No.
We are not alleging that there was an abuse of the medications,
No.
but they were being taken as prescribed,
Yes.
as increased, as the doctor had approved an increase, and as needed under your care. Okay. At that time, based upon your knowledge and experience of your husband, was he acting normally?
No.
Was he thinking normally?
Objection. How's she gonna know how he's thinking?
Based upon your observations, though, was your husband what we'll call normal Ben at that time?
No. He was very, he would sit down and be watching his sports program, and normally he's engaged in his sports programs, and he'd end up falling asleep, sitting up straight, not leaning against anything. Sometimes when I would talk to him, he would be slow to answer, and sometimes he would start talking and then just stop his sentence, and then he'd be crying because of his uncle.
That's all.
Just very briefly. For clarification, the 31st was a Thursday, so, yeah, so he called out on Monday and then couldn't get in until Thursday, is that what your testimony is? Or till the 31st?
I know that he was hurt, I don't remember the days.
Okay.
I know that he was hurt at the softball game,
That was the 26th Saturday.
and when he wasn't getting any better, I insisted he go to the emergency room. And then when we tried to get a follow-up appointment, we couldn't get it right away. They set up the appointment with us later, and I'm sorry, I don't know the dates.
Okay, that's okay. No, the records show that it was the 31st, which was a Thursday. So is that the week that you're talking about from the heard us back on the 26th, which was a Saturday? So that week of the 26th to the 1st of February, is that when, or the 31st? He was
Yes.
in the pain and all that. Are you familiar with the United States National Library of Medicine, Medicine Plus website? Have you ever heard of that one, that has drug interactions and things listed?
No, my hospital uses a different site. We go directly onto our hospital
Okay,
link.
okay. And how about, are you familiar with the Mayo Clinic?
Yes.
And have you ever looked at the Mayo Clinic site and any of the drug interactions and things like that they've?
Not for drug interactions.
Okay. So would you dispute it if I told you that both the Mayo Clinic and the National Library of Medicine say that confusion is a very rare occurrence for the use of a muscle relaxant?
I would have no knowledge what they said.
Okay, so you wouldn't dispute it if they said that? You don't disagree with that because you don't know?
I don't know.
Okay, would you agree with me that if someone is getting confused from a medication, that was a pretty serious side effect?
It could be.
Okay, and is that something that you should probably call your doctor if you're having some kind of a side effect like that?
You could.
Okay. And if the Mayo Clinic and this National Library of Medicine reflect that confusion when taking Flexeril, you should contact your doctor immediately. You don't dispute that, do you?
I don't dispute it. I don't know what all they say. I haven't been on the site.
Okay. And you've described your husband's condition during this period with the back and how difficult it is physically things were correct during that time period.
Yes.
Getting his pants on, all those things you described.
Yes.
Were you aware that he had gone to work on February the 5th and engaged in activity for a training session, physical activity?
Yes. I did. I did not agree with that decision. He said that he would not be bending down, and that was one of the, I believe, one of the restrictions that they had talked about, with bending down.
Okay, that's all.
Just one follow-up, and I apologize, I forgot to ask. I actually specifically asked you to go to, was it Walgreens or CVS?
Yes.
Okay, and get the, they always give a pamphlet when they give a prescription.
Yes.
Do they not? And I asked you specifically to go and get that, and you did.
Yes.
Okay, would you flip to that, please? And it is the second page of the printout on the bottom. And it starts, it's capitalized, capital letters, "This medicine may cause." Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, would you read aloud that sentence all the way through to the other page?
This medicine may cause drowsiness, dizziness, or blurred vision. Do not drive, operate machinery, or do anything else that could be dangerous until,
Yeah, it cuts off.
yeah, that's
At the top where it says possible side effects.
possible side effects that may occur while taking this medication include constipation, diarrhea, dizziness, dry mouth, fatigue, nausea, nervousness, stomach pain, or upset. If they continue or are bothersome, check with your doctor.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so, that's all, thank you.
Oh, sorry. Are we done?
Oh, yes.
I don't have anything further for this witness.
Any questions from the board? Any questions, thank you for your testimony. You thought you'd never get up there. Well, you were sworn in earlier, correct?
Yes, sir.
Would you state your name for the record, please, sir?
My name is Benjamin West.
Sergeant West, you've been with the department for 14 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Roughly 14 years. During that time, would you explain to the board briefly any accommodations that you've received, awards, anything?
I've received 5 letters of accommodation. I've received Officer of the Shift nominations, 2 of them, several positive EPNs, and caught in acts, more than I could count, over a 14-year period. I put myself through instructor school, which means I had to take off my own personal time from work to put myself through this school so that I can teach at the college or also the jail. I also took a defensive tactics instructor's class, which I also put through myself. And I was also nominated by Dr. Ford, myself, and another sergeant to go to the FDLE program, which helps you to be promoted to lieutenant. And I completed that. It was an 86-hour class, no more than 86, probably about 160-hour class, which was very, very hard to get into.
In November 20th, you received notice that you are to show up to witness, or to provide sworn testimony regarding an investigation that's going on.
Yes, ma'am.
And you do that.
Yes, ma'am.
And during that interview, you're asked specifically to recall events from August.
Yes,
Regarding Officer Stella's knee injury and the subsequent events that occurred.
yes.
Briefly tell the board what you recall from that morning.
Okay. I remember I was sitting down eating breakfast, which is actually our dinner because it was night shift, so it was the last pretty much break or whatever before everything starts happening. And Officer Stella came from the inside of the kitchen, where the inmates cook the food and do everything else. He came from inside there saying that he hurt his knee. I said, "What do you mean you hurt your knee?" He goes, "I twisted my knee and slipped in some water, but I think I'll be okay, I'll just walk it out." So I said, no. I said, "Come down here, over here, sit down, take a couple minutes, and let's see, how you feel." So after about a couple minutes or so, he stood up and he said his knee was still hurting him really bad, so which time I brought him to the clinic. Once I brought him to the clinic, they determined, medical at the jail determined that he needed to go to the hospital. I then brought him to the shift commander's office.
Who's the shift commander?
Shift commander at the time was Captain Hunter.
What happens in the office?
Once I had him sit down, I then asked Captain Hunter, or I informed Captain Hunter that Officer Stella was injured and that he needs to start an action report. And she just kind of looks at me, all bug-eyed, and she's like, "Well, you need to just handle it," and she walks out. And I was like, "Okay."
So you got the paperwork going?
So I got the paperwork going, and then I found out, I don't remember who told me, but we had to do an additional paper called the STARS report. Now I know what it's called, but at the time I had no clue, which is only online. So I again, Captain Hunter had come back in the office, and I again informed her that, "Hey, listen, we need to do this report, the STARS report." She's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And at which time Sergeant Lowenstein, who was, the way the shift commander's office is set up, this will help give you guys a better scope of it. When you first walk through the door, there's a open room, and that's where the sergeants would sit. Behind where the sergeants would sit would be a captain's office and a lieutenant's office. And they're not very large, but nonetheless they're there. So Sergeant Lowenstein, who was sitting in the lieutenant's office at the time, came out and said, yeah, you do need the STARS report, and he started trying to look it up online. Well, as he was doing that, I had to go to another site to find the other action report, which I have never done. And I found it, and as I'm finding it, again, trying to get it printed out, I noticed that Captain Hunter is standing next to, or behind Officer Stella, who would be, so I was sitting here, it's kind of an L shape, so Stella's sitting here, and I was sitting right here. And I remember I was turning, talking to him about some of the paperwork, which time Captain Hunter came behind him and licked him from the lower part of his neck up to the top of the head. When she did, he flinched a little bit, and I guess he had also injured his back, apparently, and his knee, and I was like, and I saw that he was in pain, so I looked at Captain Hunter and said, "Listen, leave the guy alone, he's injured." And then from there, you want me to continue going, or?
Okay, so you see this event?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But you're still in charge of the paperwork?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, does Officer Stella jump up and throw a fit?
No.
Okay, so what you witnessed was certainly unusual. But at the time, the injury that Officer Stella has takes precedent.
Yes.
Okay, so you finish the paperwork, And
Like, then are on our way to the hospital.
on your way to the hospital, so you walk out of the jail and you head to the parking lot.
Yes, ma'am.
You're escorting, you're the driver.
Yes.
And do you come in contact with Lieutenant McBride?
Yeah, and when I was going out, Lieutenant McBride was smoking a cigarette,
Tell me what that conversation was.
and as I was walking by, I think Stella had kept on going to the truck, or maybe was already in the truck. I really don't recall the specifics, but I remember I told Lieutenant McBride, I said, look, I said, you know how Stella's a germ freak. I said, Hunter licked his head, and I said, he's pretty pissed right now. I said, but you know how he is, you know. And that was it. And then I got in the truck and I left.
So it wasn't an official report of something that happened,
No.
but it was mentioned.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so then you go to the hospital.
We go to the hospital. Per policy, I waited till his wife arrived. Once his wife arrived, then I returned back to the jail. And this was already past the time that I would have been off.
Okay,
So I just clocked out and I went home.
okay. 109 days go by. Okay. You go in, you give your statement, and you're pretty solid on what you do remember, what you don't remember. Remember the lick. You don't, I think at that time, you don't recall the wet willy, you don't recall the fluctuating. At that time, you don't recall that it specifically happened that way. Correct?
No,
Okay.
I did not.
Okay. You are then called in January. On January 23rd, you're called for a second interview.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's your understanding at that time that the reason that you're there is that because now, in the interim, Captain Hunter has been interviewed, and she has brought up some things, maybe as possible motives as to why everyone would make up this story.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so during this second interview, you are being confronted with those claims.
Yes, I was.
Okay, and during the second interview, at the end of the interview, let me go back. So during the second interview, did you feel that you were coming under attack?
Yes, ma'am. I actually asked Captain Van several times during that interview if I was being investigated myself.
Right, so at this point, as far as you knew, you were still a witness.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you had provided truthful testimony as to what you remember.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you're in the second interview and you feel under attack. You're being questioned about things, specifically. You're eventually asked for a copy of your jump drive, which the jump drive is a little thing you stick in the computer and keep all your files on,
Yes.
right? Okay,
Yes.
and you can take it with you. And on that jump drive is,
All of prior to becoming a sergeant, I was also an FTO. So all my trainees, all the disciplinary reports that I've written, all 401s that I've written since we've had, computers on the unit. All my use of forces, all my pertinent reports, or even unimportant reports, I've saved all of those on my jump drive.
what was the significance of that being taken from you?
Apparently Captain Hunter had told Captain Vanis that I had some kind of Hall of Fame or something, and then I go around bragging to people about, look at all these use of forces, and I had different videos on there, and
But what did it mean to you?
it was,
What the act of having it taken, the act of coming under?
I felt like I was being investigated. I felt like, why am I'm a witness here, but yet I have to give my personal stuff from information from someone that's already under investigation, and I just felt like I was being attacked. I felt like, oh boy, here we go, this is just all leading up to the great unravel or something. I didn't know what was going on, but I figured that it definitely wasn't leading to something very well.
Okay, so then you get injured at the softball game.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. First, before you get injured, you're out for the flu for a couple of days.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so you come back, you go to the softball game, you get injured. Would you consider your injury significant?
Yes. Yes, I couldn't bend over. Like my wife said, I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't stand up from a chair. It was my lower back. I don't know if any of y'all have ever hurt your lower back, but your lower back, that's what you bend or you stand. You don't realize how much you use it until you injure it.
So you're home for a couple days. During this time, also you suffer a significant personal loss
Yes,
by way of a family member, and that significantly affected you.
yeah. My uncle was mentally retarded, so,
Now, you're at home, okay, you're taking these medications. Is it fair to say that you are, during this downtime, are you thinking about work? Are you thinking about the investigation?
yes, I'm definitely, that's all that's going through my mind right now is I'm gonna be railroaded here. I'm a sergeant. I'm testifying against a captain. They're taking information from me. They're saying different things. The use of force came up about how, you know, that, I don't even remember what Captain Vanna said about the use of force, but I remember the use of force came up. He asked me if I thought it was good, I thought it was bad. He asked me about another officer and how I dealt with something else. And then he took my jump drive, which to me, you know, that was like, what do you mean you need my jump drive with all my reports? And I mean, at that point, I was totally defensive. I was like, they're coming after me, and
Is it fair to say that you're at home, dwelling a lot on this, and you're scared?
I'm scared. And that's all. And at the time, I'm usually a person that I like to do stuff. I usually don't like to sit down that much. I love my job. I'm a hard worker. I do my job 100%. I am a corrections officer. That's been my whole life. I started when I was 23 years old. And all I'm thinking about is they're coming after me. It doesn't matter what I said or anything else. And then I really started just thinking about my testimony. And I mean, just sitting there thinking and thinking.
Were you,
And
would you consider yourself confused?
I definitely confused myself, I think.
Do you remember placing the phone call to Captain Vanis?
Somewhat. I mean, I was in an emotional mess. I remember thinking, okay, I know I saw the lick behind the head, and they're just like constantly running through the story. I'm like, well, maybe I did see the wet willy too. And then I'm thinking, well, maybe I saw the wet willy instead of the kiss, and I'm like, well, maybe or not the kiss, I'm sorry, the lick behind the head. I say,
And prior to this, you were very solid in what you were doing.
I was absolutely 100% solid.
Okay.
For some reason, I wait, and I was scared.
Do you remember specifically what you stated to Captain Vanis on the phone?
I want to say specifically, but I'm more than confident that I don't remember saying that I definitely saw this and not this. I think it was more, because the way I was feeling was, I'm not really sure which one I saw. I'm not sure if it was this or if I saw this. It's a combination of both, and that's what I told you.
Okay. So you're a mess, you don't remember specifically what you said, but your recollection is that you did not commit to this one particular thing or this particular.
No, ma'am.
Okay. When you get off the phone with Captain Vanis, and a few hours later, he arrives at your house. Yes. Okay. At the time that he's there to give you the paperwork, are you inside the home or are you outside the home?
Well, when he knocked, I don't remember if he actually came up to my door and knocked, or the dog, so he started barking. And he had already called me before he came, and I knew that he was on his way. So I might have stepped out. I don't recall if he knocked, and then I went out or whatever it was.
So whatever your interchange was, do you specifically recall the substance of that conversation?
I remember he said something to me, and I said, very likely that I said, I just don't remember which one. And he was like, well, I'm just trying to get to the truth. I'm like, that's all I want, is for you to know the truth. And then as soon as he handed me that paper, showing I was under investigation, I was like, I had nothing else to say.
Okay. So, a few days later, you go in for your third interview. Was it a few days later?
I
point,
think it's a week or two.
a week or two. So at that point, by the time you come back for your third interview, are you done taking medication?
Yes,
Okay, so you are Johnny on the spot again.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. You go back under oath, and your testimony for the third time is consistent with the other two times,
Yes.
the other
yes,
two
ma'am.
interviews,
Yes,
sworn
ma'am.
interviews. Okay. You showed up, I guess, a day early.
Yes.
Is that correct? And it was for a training, a
Yeah,
pepper.
the pepper ball training, yes, it was.
Was that it?
To me, it wasn't extraneous at all. I don't know if anybody shot a firearm here, but that was one of the parts. And the second part was pepper ball training. And I basically, I'm trying to make sure that I'm right here. There's a team leader, and so I was basically the team leader most of the time. Then the second person, the team leader just stands there, they direct the group, and say, okay, well, you have two teams that come out, I'm sorry, I'm trying to explain it to you. But you have two teams that come out, and say, okay, you three are going here, you three go here, and then you kind of follow behind them from a distance.
But it's primarily, your
It's just-
involvement is not super active.
No, I'm not bending over, which was my biggest problem, was bending over or going from a standing position to a seated position, or from a seated position to standing position. Once I'm standing, I'm fine, as long as I'm not standing for hours, which we weren't out there for hours.
Okay. Very briefly, the issue regarding your call out, or that you called on the day that you went to the emergency room, you're gonna be out the next day. What's the issue with this call out?
I don't understand what the big issue is. I know that I've always been told that if you're gonna miss more than a couple days, you call RFMS, which is where Lieutenant Smith works. So that's what my original call was, I think, was that Sunday that Dr. Ford said. My original call was to the lieutenant or shift supervisor on duty. And I said, well, I'm not gonna be in for the next day or two, I have to go see the doctor. Then once I saw the doctor, and they said, well, we're gonna put you off.
Sorry, don't mean to interrupt. At that time, would you have told him that you had been to the emergency room that day? Or do
I
you
very
remember?
well might have.
Okay.
I mean, do I recall? Absolutely, I don't remember what I said to him. I remember I said, it hurt my back. I would think that. I said, yeah, I've been to the emergency room, that's probably why I said I had a doctor's appointment, which was terminated.
Okay. So you told him that you were gonna go to the doctor.
Yes,
You end up going to the doctor as soon as the doctor will see you.
yes.
Okay. And was your injury so significant that the doctor actually referred you for physical therapy?
Yes, it was. It took like two or 3 weeks to get into it, but yes, I was doing physical therapy for a while for my back.
Okay. And once you finally come back, the FMLA paperwork.
The FMLA paperwork, when I talked to Lieutenant Smith, he told me to download it on my computer. I could not figure out how to get it downloaded. So I remember I was like, okay, well, I looked it up. I think I tried calling him, he was going to answer in his office. He's kind of tough to get a hold of every once in a while. So I believe whatever day it was, I went out to the county, to the jail, before my day was back, and I picked up my paperwork from it, because I told her, I said, I can't find out internet or whatever, so I need to. And also, by this time, I was off my medication. I can't drive to the jail if I'm taking my medication.
So you pick up the paperwork, you take it to your doctor. As far as you know, you complied as best you could with that policy.
Yes.
Okay. During your internal affairs investigation, were you at any time provided with the transcript or with the transcript of Lieutenant McBride's testimony, which disputed whether you put her on notice or reported to her?
No, I was not.
Were not provided that. Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. West. You were a sergeant in corrections, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you testified that you had a lot of training and things like that, is that
Yes,
correct? Okay. You in fact had received some ethics training from the county attorney's office, didn't you? You remember that? An attorney by the name, an African-American attorney named Charles Hargrove came out and gave ethics training.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you if I did or did not.
Okay, you're not disputing that, if the records show that you received that training? Okay. And in fact, that training from Deputy County Attorney Hargrove all included information about truthfulness in your job and retaliation, what would happen if someone retaliated against someone for being truthful. Isn't that right?
I don't remember the training, so I couldn't tell you if that's right or wrong.
Okay, well, you're not disputing that you know you're supposed to be truthful in your job, are you?
I'm always truthful in my job.
Okay, and you know that that's a very important thing in your job, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you saying that you don't know anything about retaliation or what would happen if you told something that got Captain Hunter in trouble, for example? Is it your testimony that you feel like you could have been retaliated against and that you wouldn't be protected?
Absolutely.
Okay. And what do you base that on?
The jail, working for the jail or law enforcement, it's a different type of job than road and bridge or anything else. Somebody wants to set you up, if people want to nitpick every little thing you do, they're gonna find something wrong. If you go out of your way and you do your job 100%, all the time you do the best you're gonna do, you're gonna make a mistake, and that just kind of shows that maybe you're doing your job.
Okay.
But I mean, people can be nitpicked or whatever and set up
Okay.
in different ways.
In 14 years, had that happened to you? Had you
No.
been nitpicked or set up in any way?
I've never told on a lieutenant captain either.
Okay. You heard Lieutenant McBride testify today, didn't you,
I
that
did.
she did not tell you, or that you did not tell her on August the 4th?
She
Did I
lied?
finish my question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
You're saying she lied?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you're under oath gonna call another lieutenant in the organization a liar?
I am.
Okay. That's where I was going, so you took that one right out of me there. What motive would she have to lie? About you, her friend, her outside of work friend, social friend?
I agree. I was just as surprised as you were. What motive? Maybe that she didn't want to lose her job. I don't know. I'm not trying to be sarcastic with you, man. I don't know what she was thinking, but she lied.
You testified today that your jump drive was taken from you, and that was a very, scary thing, or caused you a lot of concern.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, your jump drive wasn't taken from you, it was downloaded and back to you, correct?
Yes, same thing.
And your jump drive didn't have anything personal on it, it was all work-related matters, wasn't it?
Well, one of the reports on there had to do with, because I was up for promotion for lieutenant. And it had to do with my pay scale and what I was expecting when the job was offered to me.
It was something that you had drafted, are you saying?
Yes, ma'am, I drafted it myself.
Okay, and let me see if I can understand. So at the time when all this is happening, this investigation of Captain Hunter and you giving testimony, you were up for promotion to lieutenant?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were confident enough, or were you on a list somewhere that you knew that job was gonna be offered to you?
I was very confident, yes, ma'am. I was number 2 on I scored number 2, and the number 1 person had already been promoted.
Okay, so on this jump drive, you had decided what kind of salary you were gonna ask for if you were offered the promotion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so in terms of what you would have at stake in this case, if you lied, it was a promotion, wasn't it? You were
No.
afraid that you weren't gonna get promoted if you cooperated in this investigation or if you changed your testimony. Isn't that true?
No.
No? You would agree that if Captain Hunter accused you of a use of excessive force, that that's something that should be looked into, shouldn't it, investigated?
100% should be looked into.
So you don't dispute that Captain Vanis should take the jump drive and should try to find out or investigate the allegations that Hunter was making against you. Wouldn't you expect that?
I would in a way, but at the same time, I didn't understand at the time why would she take, and the jump drive that he originally took a copy of was my personal jump drive. and I did give it up to him voluntarily. But still, I mean, when somebody is looking into your personal stuff, it makes you kind of wonder and nervous.
Well, he explained to you, didn't he, why he wanted to look at your jump drive?
I believe so.
Right, in your interview, your second interview, page 13, Captain Vanis says, now in regards to the use of force stuff, obviously I'm asking these questions for a reason. She's raised, meaning Captain Hunter, some questions about these uses of force. And one of the things she's raised is saying that you have like a Hall of Fame or something on your flash drive for uses of force, or a trophy room, something like that. And you say absolutely not. So you were told why he wanted to download your flash drive, weren't you?
Yeah, I was told.
And it was to try to either corroborate something that she was saying against you, which obviously would have hurt you, or to clear you of her allegations. Isn't that true?
I thought at the time that.
Yes or no? Isn't that true? That's what, he wanted your flash drive so that he could either corroborate what she was saying against you, in which case you would have been in trouble for something, or to clear you of any allegation of use of force, yes or no? And he explained
If
it
that's
to you.
what, that's not how, I don't think that's how I took it at the time.
You didn't take it at the time. But those were the words that I just read straight from the transcript.
And I believe you, but at the time, that doesn't mean that's how it's looking.
Okay, all right. If there was nothing improper on your jump drive, then why would you be worried about it being looked at by Captain Vanis?
Because I still felt that I'm here as a witness, and somebody that's being investigated is throwing dirt at me.
But you weren't under investigation at that time, were you?
I felt like it.
But you had not been noticed and you were
No, I
not
was not.
under investigation at that time. So you took it that you were a target of some sort,
Yes.
but in fact Captain Vanis explained to you what he was trying to do with the information, didn't he?
If that's what the reports say, then absolutely.
Okay. When you were interviewed on February 15th by Captain Vanis, after you talked to him on the phone, by the way, you don't dispute that you spoke with him on the phone February 1st, do you?
No, I do not.
And you don't dispute that he came to your house and you had a conversation of sorts with him, is that
Yes.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you didn't tell Captain Vanis at that time, did you, that you were on medications or felt confused, did you?
No.
You earlier in your direct examination said that you wavered on that day, on February the 1st, based on all these outside influences. So you admit, don't you, that you told Captain Vanis something different on February the 1st over the phone and in person than what you had testified to in your sworn interview?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you still taking